Hello everyone, and welcome back to the RG Models 86 channel. In this video I'll be showing you how I put together this 009 scale narrow gauge diorama from beginning to end. I'll also show you some of the modelling techniques I used along the way. Right, let's go back in time and start at the beginning. So the first thing we'll need is a baseboard. For that, I'm using this one from Scenic, which is their Type 7 diorama baseboard. It's the same dimensions as a sheet of A4 size paper. Oh, just a quick heads up too, Scenic are going to feature quite heavily in this build, as I tend to use a lot of their products. Next, the track. I'm using an offcut length of Pico 009 narrow gauge flexible track, which I had in my stock of bits for future projects. I also have this Metcalfe kit of a country cottage which came free with Railway Modeler magazine. Now the first order of business is to get this kit built. So, cue the time lapse. As you can see, this kit went together without any issues. I find Metcalfe's kits are pretty simple to assemble, and I've built quite a few of them in my time. Whilst the cottage is drying, I'll now turn my attention to the track, which has been shaped into an S-bend and pinned down onto the baseboard. And with the overhanging end carefully cut off, it's time to ballast the track. So cue the next time lapse. Some people find track ballasting a daunting task. I actually find it rather therapeutic and calming. Once the ballast is laid and tamped down, it's now a case of locking it in place, first with a spray of isopropyl alcohol, and then a squirt of Scenic's track ballasting glue. Now it's time to leave it to dry for 24 hours. The next step is to weather up the ballast and to make it look like it hasn't been freshly laid. The first step is to spray the area with rusty red coloured spray dye by Model Mates. Just a few short, sharp blasts is all we need. Once this is completely dried, we can now move on to the next stage, which is adding the weathering powders to both the track and the ballast. I'm using a variety of different colours from Humbrol. Now, watching me do this in real time is about as exciting as watching paint dry. So, cue the next time lapse. When sped up, you can see how quickly the weathering effect comes together. The final stage will be to seal in the weathering powders with a matte clear varnish. This will also tone down the brighter colours. At this stage, I'm also going to weather down the look of the cottage and make it look like an old building. When you build Metcalfe kits, you can add more detail of your own if you wish to. I'll also be adding further details to the building later on. Now it's time to make a start on the landscaping. I've already pre-cut 2 pieces of scrap polystyrene roughly to shape, and these are glued into place on the baseboard using Scenic's basing glue. Yes, that's right, the same glue that's used for their Progress layering system. You can also use it as an alternative to PVA glue. Because it's plastic based, it will hold better over time. Now we're about to move on to the next stage of the landscaping, which is where we're going to add plaster and mod rock. But before we do so, I need to mask off the track and the ballast first to ensure that they stay clean. Once that's done, we can get to the messy part. First, plaster is applied to the front of one of the hills to turn it into a rock face. As the plaster begins to cure, more is applied on top to build up the layers. And as the plaster continues to dry, more detail is carved into the rock face. The second step is to cover both polystyrene hills in plaster bandage, or as it's also known, mod rock. Pre-cut lengths are dipped into warm water and then laid into place. Incidentally, warm water isn't essential when applying mod rock, but it will make the plaster cure that little bit faster. And also, I'd rather put my hands in warm water rather than cold. I also have a second bowl out of shot which has warm soapy water in to wash my hands periodically, as over time more wet plaster is generated by the repeated dunking of the bandage strips. For this particular diorama, I used 2 layers of mod rock. There's no need to wait for the previous layer to dry before applying the next layer, as the plaster in the layers will run together to make one solid piece, upon which the scenery will be built. Once the mod rock is laid, it's a good idea to run your fingers over the area to rub the plaster in and to get rid of the weave of the bandage. At this point, I decided to extend the foot of one of the hills by using some Scenic's fibre mould plaster, which is a blend of shredded paper and plaster powder, which when mixed with water forms a kind of papier-mâché. If it's not obvious yet, I do love a bit of messy modelling. With that done, everything is left to dry for another 24 hours. With the plaster now completely dry, it's time to start adding some colour to the rock face. First, a coat of watered down grey acrylic paint is applied to seal in the plaster and provide a base colour to work from. Once the base colour has dried, we can now apply more shades of the same colour. Here I'm using light grey, medium grey and dark grey. The technique I'm using is called leopard spotting. You simply apply the watered down paint to the plaster with a sponge, starting with the lighter colours and finishing with the darker ones. After leaving the paint to dry thoroughly, a black wash is then applied over the entire area. The wash will collect and pool in the cracks and crevices, making them appear deeper. The final step is to dry brush the rock face to highlight the outcrops. And when it's all dry, you should have something that looks like this. You can see on the bottom, I also added a green wash to simulate moss. And with the hills painted green to seal in the mod rock, we're now ready to move into the groundwork. A line of glue is brushed onto one of the hills and white ballast stones sprinkled onto it to make a footpath. All stones that didn't get captured by the glue are vacuumed up before track ballast glue is used to lock in the footpath. Switching over to the other hill, a rough circle of glue is spread out and brown earth scatter sprinkled over it. This is where the tree will be planted later. Once again, the loose scatter is vacuumed and the area soaked in track ballast glue. Yes, you can use this glue on other scatter materials besides ballast. Returning to the other hill, the same earth scatter is placed around where the cottage will stand. Whilst the glue is drying, we'll now turn our attention to the tree. First, 3 shades of green static grass are placed onto the projection plate of the Scenic's Pro Grass box applicator. Here I'm using 1mm spring, 1mm summer and 1mm autumn. The 3 colours are then roughly mixed together. The tree armature is a piece of seafoam that has been sprayed with glue and is now waved over the projection plate of the grass applicator. The grass fibres are negatively charged and then flung upwards towards the positively charged seafoam, which is attached to the crocodile clip. To add further colour to the tree, another coat of spray glue is applied and fine flock scatter is sprinkled on. With 3 green shades of static grass and 4 green shades of flock scatter, this is the end result. The tree can now be planted into the diorama with a drop of superglue. Going back to the cottage, I'm now applying glue to the walls and sprinkling flock scatter onto it to create creeping ivy. Now it's time to apply the static grass onto the scene. As you can see in the background, the track has been covered over again with masking tape, just to make sure the grass doesn't go anywhere it's not supposed to. With the base colour down, it's time to start layering up with the different colours. Remember, grass isn't just green, and no 2 blades of grass are ever the same shade of colour. Before the grass dries, it's a good idea to comb the grass on the steepest parts of the hill upwards. Remember, grass doesn't grow at a 45-degree angle. Now we can remove the masking tape from the track. I don't know why, but I always find this part really satisfying. Now the cottage is glued in place and the groundwork is built up around it so that it doesn't look like it's levitating above the ground. You may notice in the corner of this shot that the rock face has had a chunk taken out of it. This was due to careless handling of the grass applicator, but don't worry, I'll sort this out in a moment. The final piece of scenery to build are the bushes along the top of the rock face. Once again, it's Scenic to the rescue with one of their more recent releases, the tree and bush modelling fibre. Small pieces of the fibrous material are laid in the glue along the length of the rock face top. Remember that piece of chipped rock face from earlier? Well, it gets covered over. You'd never know it was there. With the fibre glued down, it's just a matter of applying spray glue and sprinkling scatter material over the top to create the foliage. Finally, the edges of the scene are neatened up with a coat of black paint. A sky background is placed behind the scene, and with that, the diorama is complete. Well, that just about wraps it up for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching the build and that you were able to pick up some modelling tips and techniques along the way. As I used a lot of their products in this build, I'll also leave a link in the description of this video to Scenic's website. Head on over there and see what products they have on offer. Be sure to like, share and subscribe for more videos and click the notification bell so that you'll know when I upload new videos in the future. I've been RGModels86, and until I see you in the next video, stay safe and well. Bye everyone!